Before we get this video underway, we have to note that in about an hour and a half after this video will be public on YouTube, the Habs will be playing again against the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's game 2 of their, what is it called, the Prospect Showdown? Yeah, that's what it is. 2 games against the Toronto Maple Leafs prospects. We'll see what happens later today as the game begins at 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. EST. And of course, we're going to go out there and talk about what happens after the fact. Lane Hudson was dominant in yesterday's Toronto-Montreal showcase. We'll see if we see any more standout performances in today's action. But before this game gets underway, I wanted to go out there and make a video about one of the other things that Eric Engels answered in his recent Canadiens mailbag. Now, we did already make a video talking about this mailbag article, Who Starts with Doc and Laine, because one of the other thoughts that Eric Engels ended up entertaining in this article went over the idea as to the Canadiens potentially pursuing Mikko Rantanen. And yeah, that's a really big deal. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but it is a pretty notable idea nonetheless. So when it comes to this article, I'll leave a link in the description once more if you wanted to go ahead and read this yourself. It's a mailbag, you know how these work. Eric Engels received questions on Twitter from folks looking to get his perspective on how things work. So without further ado, let's go out there and read this question from Jay Marr, who asks Eric Engels, Jake Evans, Michael Pezzetta, and David Savard are all pending UFAs. Do you think any of the 3 will be extended? Let us not underestimate continuity. Now, I get it, I think I have decent reading comprehension skills. This is not really asking about trades. This is just a regular question saying, hey, there are 3 guys whose contracts are expiring, what do you think is going to happen? And this is where Eric Engels gives a very interesting reply. I'd give an edge to Jake Evans in terms of being extended, but don't expect any of that to be sorted out in short order. Michael Pezzetta has value to the Canadiens right now, but that value could diminish slightly if one or if both Florian Xhekaj and Luke Tuch show NHL readiness. I don't know if they'll do that immediately in training camp, but I don't think it's a stretch that one or both make Pezzetta more expendable in the near future. And that's pretty reasonable. I'd say that it depends a lot on prospects too. Evans and Pezzetta are both forwards that, in a perfect world, don't really have a super important role on the Montreal Canadiens if all the other prospects work out. I mean, think about things right now. If you had Ivan Demidov in the mix, you'd have a top 6 that's already solidified. You have Josh Waugh, Josh Anderson, and then, I don't know, Owen Beck or something in the third line. And then if you round everybody else out, you got Brendan Gallagher and maybe a Mesha or somebody else. There really wouldn't be enough room for guys like Evans and Pezzetta long term. As for David Savard, though, and this is where the entire video topic of today's conversation comes from, I think if it were up to him, he would be a Montreal Canadien for life, Eric Engels writes. But even David Savard knows he's getting boxed out by younger players who need to gain experience for the team to be able to get where it intends to inevitably go. For that reason, and several others, including his profile as a big, fearless, versatile right-handed veteran, David Savard will be very high up on every trade board that exists. Not only is it likely that he moves, he could move sooner than expected if both Reinbacher and Mailloux have the types of training camps that force the Canadiens to go to market with Savard earlier than they'd be planning to. Not that I'm suggesting Savard will be moved before the season starts, I'm just considering the possibility without guaranteeing it, that he could move before Christmas if the Canadiens feel they can redeem some value and not only adequately replace him in their lineup, but also potentially even upgrade on him internally. There are also scenarios that could see Savard remain with the Canadiens until his contract expires next June. Maybe the kids don't prove ready for NHL full-time duty. Maybe injuries force the team to hold Savard. Maybe he proves so vital in the team's playoff chances that his value becomes greater to the Canadiens than it does to any other team on the trade market ahead of the deadline. But even if Savard stays with the Canadiens beyond that point, I can't see there being space for him in Montreal beyond this season. So the conclusion that Engels gives out is that David Savard is probably not going to stick around. Not because he himself would not want to stick around, he probably would. It's just the Canadiens might not have a role for David Savard long term. Heading into the immediate short-term future, Engels proposes the idea that a Reinbacher or a Mailloux, or both even, could be good enough to force David Savard's role on the Canadiens down a few pegs. And if that were the case, might it be more beneficial for the Canadiens to trade Savard away right now and get some assets that could help them out long-term too? But I think it's reasonable to use some of the information we had gotten yesterday in the Canadiens and Leafs game to acknowledge that, yeah, David Reinbacher is probably not going to be good enough to make the NHL right away, unless he has like an absolutely stellar preseason and maybe even a stellar game today against the Maple Leafs in Game 2 of this head-to-head series. But yeah, no, David Reinbacher, I don't know if he's good enough to overtake Savard yet. Logan Mailloux, you could say that he needs a little bit more confidence and just more polishing up to do before he's a full-time guy capable of playing 82 NHL games. So I think the possibility of both of these younger dudes absolutely showing up in training camp and taking over, diminishing David Savard's role on the team, I don't think that's really possible, honestly. At least at this point, they could score like 5 goals each in today's game and then the entire narrative would change. But within the realm of possibility, it's not going to happen. Which is why I do appreciate that Eric Engels does give the opposing perspective in this article. Hey, what if David Savard is just too good to be moved, he's too important with the team, and he ends up staying the entire year? Then he may actually get lost in free agency for nothing because the Canadiens might not actually have it in them to re-sign the big man. But if they decide that they wanted to keep him on, and the Canadiens, let's say, contend for a wildcard spot, maybe they even squeak in, then does it become a good thing to keep David Savard around to put you in that spot to win more games? Or would you rather value, let's say, a second or a third, multiple thirds, or maybe even best case scenario, 1 first-round caliber prospect to sacrifice what is a few extra wins here and there? I mean, honestly, the trade-off, I'd say, Montreal, you don't necessarily need any more younger guys and younger assets because there are already so many good ones in the organization already. Surplus on forwards, surplus on defense, you got a few goaltenders that are looking pretty good. What are you going to lose by not trading away David Savard on the 1 year left on his contract? I mean, you got yourselves a lot of value in the way he plays, and if Reinbacher and Mailloux aren't ready, then why try to force them in anyways? I guess if the Canadiens are literally last place in the NHL this upcoming season by the time January rolls around, and they're already in the contention for James Higgins, the guy that we had talked about in yesterday's video, the first overall projected pick in 2025, a guy who already spoke out about playing in Montreal. If that's a possibility that they're so bad, then okay, trade away whomever it is you want, try to make your team even worse by trading away some of these talented players, and then solidify your chances to getting the first overall guy in 2025. But that, of course, is just kind of a ways away. We can't guarantee anything in that respect. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this David Savard trade idea tossed out there by Eric Engels. Do you think Mailloux or Reinbacher have it in them to steal Savard's spot early on this upcoming training camp and preseason, forcing Kent Hughes' hand at making a trade sooner rather than later? Do you think this is possible? If Savard sticks around with the team, do you think it's more likely that he re-signs, or does he go to free agency and sign elsewhere? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.